Hi, my name is Anirudh Pula. I'm a rising sophomore at a small school called Pingree, which only has about 350 people, and it's in a town called South Hamilton. So what I'm going to be talking to you about today is what I call the Pingree Project, which is to try to raise the amount of plastic recycling that we do from 0% to 100% in 2 years. So before I do that, I just want to talk to you a bit about plastic recycling and why I do it for my project. So I decided I'd do it in the form of numbers because those generally are pretty good at putting things into perspective. So 2% is the amount of recycling that we do compared to the amount of trash that we put into landfills and compared to how much we recycle. So out of all the trash that we produce, which includes like food waste or paper or plastic, about half of that could be recycled, but instead we only do about 2%, which is pretty astounding if you think about it, since recycling is pretty simple. It doesn't require any physical effort or any reason for you to go out of your way. It's just pretty many towns that have made it easy for recycling to be picked up. 35 billion is the amount of plastic bottles that Americans go through every year. Now, if you lay that out, that would basically cover the entire city of Cleveland. Now, so when you think about the amount of water that's in a plastic bottle, that's only about 4 cents worth, but somehow we're pressured into paying $1 or $1.50 for something that both consumes the environment's resources by both generating and creating a plastic bottle and is harmful for our wallets as well. However, a bit more happy statistic is that 88% is the amount of energy we save when we recycle a plastic bottle and reuse it compared to how much it takes to create a plastic bottle from scratch. This includes both, well, the main thing that we save on is the effort to generate plastic and gather all the resources needed to make it. So that's one of the main reasons why I'm choosing to do plastic recycling as my initiative. Now, as I said, I go to a small high school, local group. It's in South Hamilton. And we do a lot of sustainable efforts at our school. We have a composting bin in the cafeteria that's pretty successful. We have environmental posters all around school. There are recycling bins in every classroom. But one thing that we don't do, although we appear to do it, is recycle plastic. And the main reason for that is due to plastic contamination. Now what that means is, since the town of Hamilton doesn't have single-stream recycling available to it, we have to separate our paper from our plastic, from cardboard and metals and so on. So the school does a pretty good job of separating the paper and the cardboard. However, a lot of the plastic in the school gets contaminated with food waste, and as a result, almost none of it actually ends up in a recycling bin. Now this is pretty amazing, well, amazing in a bad way if you think about it, because although we have really good efforts to stay sustainable in our school, like composting, etc. We have one basic thing that most people take for granted, but in reality, there actually is no plastic recycling in our school. And that's a second reason why I'm choosing to do this, because if we do have all the plastic in our school actually recycled, then it'll finally bring us to level all the other public and private schools in our area, as well as trying to rise above as well. So, of course, the main goal is to try to increase the amount of plastic recycling that goes into a recycling bin at the end of the day. So by 2014, the end of the next school year, we want to be able to have at least 50% of all plastic bottles end up in a recycling bin. And by 2015, the next year, we want to get it to almost all of them. And I do realize that this may sound a bit unrealistic to have the entire school on board with not putting food waste in a recycling bin designated for plastic or even paper, because the janitors don't have the time to separate paper from plastic if they're in the same bin, so they'll just throw it in the trash because the town of Hamilton doesn't want to separate their recycling materials on their own. So it does seem a bit unrealistic, but given that we do have a small school with a pretty active environmental club, I do think that at least by 2015 we'll be able to have complete recycling efficiency. So the plan that I've had is heavily based on public awareness, because I'll be honest, I didn't know that we had to separate all the different recyclable materials, because the town that I live in has single stream recycling, and we just have to combine all the recycling materials into one giant bin, and they'll separate it for us. But since Hamilton is a lot smaller, they don't have the time or the manpower to do that on their own. So the plan, of course, is to raise awareness about what can and cannot be recycled. So every Monday and Friday we have morning announcements, which is about half an hour or 20 minutes. And what it is basically an opportunity for students or faculty to make an announcement to the entire school that they want to get the entire school on board with. So this would be a perfect opportunity to both get the incoming freshmen to try to accept this recycling as a part of the school culture, but also just to remind people at the beginning of the year that we have a goal that we need to reach, and we have to use the entire school year to try to get to it. And of course, if people do forget about it, because we don't want to bother people too much about, oh, you have to recycle the and stuff, we'll put signs above each of the recycling bins in the school and try to remind them on a daily basis about what they can put in that bin and what they can't. And of course, if you want to get people to do something, you can incentivize that too. So one of the main ways we're going to do this is try to get a plastic-only recycling bin in each of the freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior areas, because they do have separate areas where the lockers are and they gather most of the time. So if we do have some sort of competition throughout the entire school year, which would end in some kind of prize, like a trip to Six Flags Candy or Park, or something that will be willing to go through the effort of putting plastic bottles in their designated bins towards, then it would be a lot more likely that they would carry out this effort throughout the entire school year, as opposed to just forgetting about it. So of course I've contacted a couple people about this. So Dave Jones is the head of the janitor staff at our school and head of facilities in general. And when I emailed him, he seemed pretty excited about this initiative because there have been a lot of people that have inquired about the recycling, but not a lot of people have actually followed through. So if we can get him on our side, because he will have a lot of power, if we need any administrative help, then it'll be a huge advantage for all of us. And this March is a science teacher at our school, at my school. She is also the head of the environmental club. She was the one who brought this issue that recycling isn't happening as much as we think at our school to the club, and actually is one of the main reasons why I'm choosing to do this for a project. And she will definitely be on board with this. She'll be able to educate the teachers during their teachers meetings, which happen about once a month, about how to monitor the students as well to make sure that they're on board with this. And Dr. Johnson is the head of our school. He's been previously helpful to the environmental club with their previous sustainable efforts. For instance, we had Earth Week in April, which coincides with Earth Day, where we have a series of sustainable events around school. We plant trees, we have outdoor lunches with open mics and stuff like that. And he's been pretty supportive of them in the past, so he'll be more than willing to help us do it again. And of course, the environmental club is about 10 to 15 people on a good day. And they'll be able to do a lot of the publicity for us. Like they can make announcements in the morning, they can make signs, because we do have meetings every week for about half an hour, so we can do that at the beginning of the year and have that carry out throughout the entire year. Because this is something that we'll have to carry out for our entire time here. It's not just one event that we can plan for, so it'll be a lot harder, so which means we need to reach out to the public a lot more consistently. So this is just a power map of how powerful they are compared to how supportive they are. And thankfully, almost everyone is supportive of our initiative, and a good amount of them are teachers and heads of both facilities and the head of school. So they'll be able to help us if we need any administrative help. So since this is based on publicity, there is really no budget. We can relocate recycling bins if we need to, but other than that, there's really nothing that we need to spend money on. So to check on our progress to see how we're doing with our initiative, we can keep in touch with the janitors and the other cleaning crew, because they're the main reason they're how we found out that we're not recycling any of our plastics, so they'll be able to keep track of if we're behind our goals or ahead of our goals. So if we are behind our goals, then you can just make a lot more announcements, remind people that it is still a competition, and that if they do reach a certain goal, then the entire school or one grade will get an incentive or a prize. So that's about it for you. Thank you for listening. And yeah, you guys have any questions?
So who's going to run the program after you? Like, who do you plan on making sure everything? Yeah, that.
Well, since I'm a sophomore, I have a little bit of time at school, but by that time, hopefully, recycling plastics and not recycling food waste will become second nature to everyone in school. So if we can try to get a way to have freshman orientation involve our initiative, then it will become second nature, and we don't have to constantly bombard them with our announcements and stuff like that. So hopefully by that time the problem will solve itself. Good?
I know you mentioned that you think that the reason that people don't do a lot of single-stream recycling has to do with manpower and time. I was wondering if you had talked to anybody who is involved with the policy specifically and got any facts and figures about why they don't implement that.
Yeah, so I talked to Dave Jones, who's the director of facilities. He basically said that the town of Hamilton is really strict with their policies, and they're probably not going to change that for a little time. So since it would be nice if we could get them to bring single stream recycling, because it would solve a lot of our issues with this entire problem. But in the meantime, our goal is just to play along and try to keep our recyclables separate.
So you said the contamination was a big problem, right?
Yeah.
What's your message around that to people, especially in the lunchroom and things like that?
Oh yeah, so can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, I'm just wondering, how are you going to get people to change their habits?
Well, the main goal is, well, as I said, public awareness, but mostly just to try to recreate a habit of separating recyclables and try to make that second nature to them. So that's why we have so many announcements in the morning. That's why we're going to have signs over every recycling bin, so that way, if they do happen to try to put food waste in a recycling bin, they'll have to stare at that right before they do it. So.
The old shame factor, right?
It's a little more intimidating to see it face to face.
Wait, so is the goal to get people to is like what should be happening is that people should be throwing out their like plastic waste that has like food in it that should go in the trash. Is that right? And only the clean plastic should go in recycling?
Yeah, because a lot of the plastic that gets recycled is just bottles, so a lot of almost all of it can be recycled. But if there is any that has food waste, we'll make sure to tell them that it can't go in the recycling bin.
Okay.
Do you think you could convince people to rinse off their plastic?
Well, that might be a bit harder because there are recycling bins everywhere, but there's not a lot of places where we can actually rinse off the plastic. So eventually, if we do want to lower the amount of plastic that goes in the recycling bin, then we can just try to introduce disposable bottles or something like that. But until then, I think the simplest path will be to put the kind of tainted plastic in the trash, because even a little bit of contaminants can render the entire batch useless. So we're just trying to make it as easy for people as possible to recycle. That's the main goal of this.
What about paper recycling at your school?
Paper recycling is almost taken care of. We have almost 100% efficiency on that, and there's a place that we can drop it off and get a little bit of money depending on how much paper we give to them. And this makes up for cardboard, which we actually have to pay to get rid of that. So we kind of balance each other out. And those are their main concerns because people seem to be doing a lot better on that.
Thank you.